You are tampering with forces you can't understand. We have major corporations sponsoring this event.
You are tuned in to the Fantasy Wire HQ QuickCast. Today's show is brought to you by Full Time Fantasy, home of the Fantasy Football World Championships. We're also a proud member of the Full Time Fantasy Network. Check them out online at fulltimefantasy.com. Welcome to the show today. We've got a good one. I am Frank B. in the Fantasy Wire HQ studios. Thanks for joining me today. You can find me on Twitter at Fantasy Wire HQ. Bookmark the website, fantasywirehq.com. Got that revamped. The Week 2 rankings are up. Starts and sits, fantasy projections, some blog articles, everything you need all in one spot. If you want to subscribe to the podcast, that would be awesome, whatever you're listening on. And if you want to drop a review, that would be cool. The QuickCast is designed to get you everything you need in under 30 minutes. That's my goal. It's a no-edit freestyle pod. I put it together just like we're at the bar, talking football, loose, casual conversation. So welcome to Week 2 of the season. I'm going to move through this week's game skid. We'll profile some of the players in each matchup, fantasy-wise, that I like, don't like, interested on, and so forth. Flex plays, all that good stuff. But listen, if you've got specific lineup questions that you need answered, post them up on Twitter anytime. But then every Sunday, 2 hours before kickoff, I'm going to do Live Wire Sunday, and that is where I will answer those questions as quickly as possible. I'm honestly, swear to God, I'm sitting there doing nothing but taking in pregame football stuff on the TV. Might be, well, it's about noon in Wisconsin, so I'm probably getting my food ready or snacks ready for the game. But yeah, I'm sitting there. I'll answer them all as quick as I can. A quick fantasy nugget before we get started. Week 2. This season's already starting off with all these injuries, hamstrings. It's crazy to me. It's already, that was week 1. Now we're week 2, and we've got a laundry list of players with hamstrings, ankles, you name it. I don't have to go over it because you've seen it all already for the most part. But I guess my biggest thing, fantasy-wise, is stay patient with the guys that are on your roster. Don't go dumping a guy just because he's missing practice and he's going to, possibly miss a game or two, when down the road, he's going to be one of the guys that could pay off on your roster. I've seen Kenny Golladay dropped and emergency'd back onto rosters. You name it, just crazy stuff. But, don't move guys out just yet. My general rule is I'll wait till like week 3 just to see how things are shaking out with these players on their respective teams before I go and say, I don't see much from this guy moving forward. Take a look at the schedule down the road before you drop players. You get in a rage and he's out of here, and you cut him. Don't do that just yet, but take a look at the schedules too, because there's going to be chunks in those schedules that are going to get you some wins, maybe some tougher matchups, end of season, what do the guys playoff, week 14, 15, 16 looking like down the road. So keep that in mind. But for now, let's get started with the games. The games.
You are looking live.
Thursday night football, the battle for Ohio. Bengals and Browns. I'm looking at Joe Burrow. I was impressed with him in week 1. This week, I think he gets his first 20-plus point fantasy outing. He's got to, right? A.J. Green and Tyler Boyd. I think this matchup for them is better than the Chargers' secondary was. I think Burrow's going to be throwing it a lot. Maybe second half, it really opens up. These two teams, I've seen them play in shootouts before. Other times they grind it out, but I think this might be a high-scoring game. Austin Hooper should get a little more attention. David Njoku's out. I don't really trust Hooper all the way yet, but he should get a little more bump than he did against the Ravens. Were tougher defense, obviously. Nick Chubb, the Browns, when they were playing mostly from behind, it was Kareem Hunt getting all the game action. But in a little more, capable game for them to win, I think it's going to be even. I want to see how that split goes with Stefanski and how he calls them, when they're in a game that they're leading or in a game where they're comfortable. We'll see how that plays out. Joe Mixon, he struggled against the Chargers defense. He lost a fumble. disappointing debut, but you know what? He handled 95% of the running back work, and he's got definite touchdown upside against a Browns team that allowed 2 scores to Dobbins last week, rookie J.K. Dobbins. So I do like Mixon. Odell Beckham, he kind of disappeared against the Ravens. The Browns' passing attack looked brutal in week 1, but Beckham did see double-digit targets. I think he's going to continue to be, in your fantasy lineup as long as he's getting that many looks. He should bounce back too. The next game on the docket, Giants and Bears. David Montgomery. That Giants run defense just got pounded by the Steelers. Montgomery and his blockers look great in Detroit, so I do like him. Sterling Shepard. He was solid, wasn't spectacular, but I think he finds the end zone this week. You got to keep an eye on Golden Tate if he's playing or not. Darius Slayton, he is on fire. He ended the season on fire. The Bears can be burned. I think their secondary is a bit shaky, but I think he's a great play, especially if Golden Tate misses games. I think Golden Tate should have that hamstring, I believe. And if he's out, you got to elevate Slayton and Shepard together. Evan Ingram, I've got him in a couple fantasy squads here. That was a tricky spot with the Steelers. The Bears struggled against the Lions and T.J. Hawkinson, so I'm hoping Ingram can bounce back. I think he can. Next up will be a wire watch game here.
You are looking live.
One that I've got an eye on is the Falcons and the Cowboys. Calvin Ridley, 19 touchdown receptions in his first 30 games. Julio Jones has scored 14 since Ridley joined the Falcons. He's on fire as well. When you look at the other side of the ball, the Cowboys, Michael Gallup and CeeDee Lamb, they didn't really break through against the Rams, but man, the Seahawks really torched that Falcons secondary, so I'm liking them a lot this week. Hayden Hurst, I think he's going to be more involved against the Cowboys defense that struggles against that position, and they also lost Van Der Esch and, why am I drawing a blank on the other linebacker they have that's always injured. But they're out. Either way, you got to like Hayden Hurst there. Tight end, Dalton Schultz. Blake Jarwin's out. Schultz is going to be the starter for the Cowboys. Do you expect him to honestly earn the same role as Jarwin? I mean, if this guy turns into a thing, I've got a bunch of 4th floor elevator buttons to sell you for your 3-story building. Moving on. The NFC North. Cowboys. What is going on here? Apologies. Lions and the Packers. Alan Lazard. I do like Alan Lazard quite a bit. 4 targets, 63 yards, and a touchdown. He's always going to play second fiddle to Devontae Adams, which is fine, but he is definitely in the mix as long as Rodgers is throwing the football. MVS, Marquez Valdes-Scantling. To me, he's like a boomer bust, kind of high risk, high reward flex play going forward. I don't know how this Packers offense is going to play out as far as receivers go. They're definitely going to want to run the ball with Aaron Jones, but between the receivers, I'm leaning more Lazard than I am MVS at this point in the season. I got to see a couple more games just to see what the pecking order is going to be. Adrian Peterson back in the NFC North against the Packers, a team that he used to beat the living hell out of when he was with the Vikings, but he's going to get all kinds of touches against an overrated run defense, and they are without big anchor defensive tackle Kenny Clark. So I think Peterson's going to run wild this week. Marvin Jones Jr., we're going to keep an eye on Kenny Golladay with the hamstring. He is going to probably face Jaire Alexander. The history in this matchup says it's Green Bay, but Jones is a sneaky play too, maybe a flex spot there. Matt Stafford. Last year at Green Bay, Stafford was held to 10 fantasy points, and the Packers' pass rush and the secondary, that's the strong spot for the Green Bay defense. I think they're going to be enough, especially if Galladay's out, to keep Stafford in check. So we can move down to the South.
You are looking live.
The Jaguars Titans matchup, Gardner Minshew. Minshew Mania is alive and well. It looked pretty damn good against the Colts. This one's on the road. Much tougher defense. I'm going to temper expectations on Gardner. James Robinson, I think he's a volume-based flex play moving forward. We're going to see how he fills Leonard Fournette's shoes there and his role. It's going to be hard to rack up a ton of fantasy points given the strength of the Jags' offense is really the passing game. So he's got a tough task against the Titans. We'll see how Robinson performs if the Jags are chasing points. I don't mind him as a flex play. We'll see how it goes, but I'm not going to slot him into any RB2, RB3 type areas just yet. Laviska Shenault, 3 catches, 37 yards, and a touchdown on his 4 targets. 2 carries for 10 yards. I think the Jags are chasing points, and Laviska can really benefit from that game script there. We can move down to the NFC South. Tom Brady. Is he back? I don't know. Week 1, you ready to write him off just yet? 2 picks, a pick 6. I mean, we'll see what plays out, but this is a good landing spot for him. I've got this down as a wire watch game for week 2 because I really want to see, is Brady on the decline or is he just fine? Was it a tough, it's Saints, it's a tough matchup, but we'll see. The Panthers defense, I think they can get picked apart everywhere by Brady on the short to deep throws, but if Chris Godwin is not playing, is it Mike Evans, Scotty Miller? We're going to have to see how, who's he throwing to, right? Ronald Jones, 77% of the Bucs carries in week 1. That's a good sign. Leonard Fournette could emerge in a rotation, but I think Jones can be trusted as an RB2. It's a good matchup. Teddy Bridgewater, Bucs pass rush is going to be jacked at home, man. I think the secondary is better than most people think, so Teddy Bridgewater is going to have some quick decisions to make there. He could be a boom or bust type second QB if you got a flex play going, super flex league and whatnot. Robbie Anderson, second on the Panthers in targets. He caught 6 for 115 and a touchdown. I think, gosh, if he could get more consistent production over the next few weeks with Teddy Bridgewater, he's going to be a great asset to your fantasy team, and he's available on a lot of waivers. So I do like Anderson. Scotty Miller, I just said if Godwin's out, it could be Scotty Miller time, and if it's going to be a thing, it's going to be a thing in Tampa Bay. Troy Aikman was talking him up on the broadcast. I mean, 5 of 6 target. He caught 5 of 6 targets for 73. Brady loves the slot guys. We saw that with Edelman and so on in New England. PPR, I think Miller's your guy. Definitely a flex consideration there. Next game.
You are looking live.
The Washington football team and the Arizona Cardinals. Chase Edmonds, 28 snaps in week 1. He never played that many as a reserve role last season. So, is this more of a committee, a sign of things to come? We'll see. Keep an eye on Edmonds. Hopefully he's on your watch list, your waiver hot ad watch list. Christian Kirk targeted 5 times against the Niners and only had 1 reception for no yards. Cold, stay the hell away. He's gone. I'm not playing him. Antonio Gibson, 11 touches for 44 yards. Good for exactly 4 yards per touch. As he gets comfortable, he's going to get a bigger role, right? But for the time being, I think he's a flex kind of player. He's going to lose touchdown opportunities to Barber, so keep him in the flex until he starts taking over those goal line plays, or they're getting creative with him, or he's scoring touchdowns, right? Logan Thomas, tight end. 8 targets for Logan Thomas, and the only tight end that saw more was Dallas Goedert.
Oh my goodness gracious!
So he played nearly 3/4 of Washington's snaps. He accounted for 15.4% of the targets. He snagged a TD. That was crazy, right? He's got a good matchup with Arizona. It's a defense that, last season, they were one of the worst defenses against the tight end. So I like Logan Thomas this week too if you need a tight end. He is also available on a lot of waivers. And then Terry McLaurin, man, do you have on your roster, do you have an adequate replacement for TMC? He was good in week 1, right? 5 for 61. Tough assignment against Darius Slay. He's got a rough stretch over his next few games. Denzel Ward, Marlon Humphrey, Jalen Ramsey, and this week it's Patrick Peterson. So you might want to consider, I'm not saying bench him, but look at your roster. If you got somebody better, maybe it's a good idea. Just compare them and see how you feel about it. Next game up, KC and the Chargers. With Phillip Rivers, they split the series last season, I believe. With Tyrod Taylor, I don't know. He looked kind of shaky in the opener. They really didn't run him at all. I'm not too keen on him this week, obviously, Super Bowl champs. Mike Williams, he wasn't expected to play into week 1 until we got into Sunday. I know they had conflicting reports and somebody reported the wrong stuff, but he was pretty much the only receiver that Taylor looked to throw deep. So I think he's got upside week to week against KC. Plenty of passing should be in order. So Mike Williams could be your guy. Sammy Watkins, he put to rest pretty much that, he wouldn't be a wide receiver 2 in KC, but there's enough weapons on that offense, as a whole, that he's not always going to have these burner weeks. But week-to-week upside with Patrick Mahomes throwing the ball, obviously it depends on the matchup. Roll the dice. Hunter Henry, tight end for the Chargers. I thought he started good last week. The Chiefs had trouble with the Texans' Jordan Akins, so I'm going to plug Henry in there too. I do like him. Next up on the slate, I've got the other Wire Watch game, and we travel to Baltimore.
You are looking live.
Ravens, Texans, J.K. Dobbins, so 23 snaps compared to 21 snaps to Mark Ingram. The Texans' run defense, they're still trying to figure out how to stop Clyde Edwards-Helaire, right? I think both Ravens backs are good plays this week. I just can't decide, do I want to start him in my RB spot or do I just want to put him into a flex play, right? I think I'm going to lean to the flex for week 2 until I see, is John Harbaugh going to ride the hot hand each week, or is he going to give, is it Ingram's turn now to shine? So we'll see. I'm going to give it, week 3, week 4 before I start deciding who's king of the hill there. And Mark Ingram on the other side, he kind of struggled in the opener, 29 yards, 10 carries. I think he's going to be better off against this Houston team. I mean, they let CEH gash him, right? 138 yards, a touchdown on the ground, and that was his debut. So Ingram, he should bounce back, right? If he doesn't, maybe I'm going to keep him as a flex play moving forward. Like I said, you just got to see how it plays out over the next few weeks. Will Fuller and Brandon Cooks, the Ravens secondary is tough, man. David Johnson looked good in the opener. He racked up 109 scrimmage yards and a TD. But the Ravens are a tough matchup for Johnson on the ground. Will Fuller and Cooks on the outsides, can they do damage if Watson's got enough time to get open? It's going to be tough man-to-man or zone, however they play them. But Will Fuller is your ceiling play week in and week out for that Texans team. Cooks, hit or miss, I'm not sure. Randall Cobb, he played a high majority of snaps in week 1, did almost nothing. So maybe, if you got Humphrey locking up Will Fuller, maybe it helps Cobb get open underneath. Maybe it doesn't make a difference. Cooks, is it Jimmy Smith or Tavon? I mean, there's a lot of different combinations that the Ravens can do with the secondary and to take these receivers out of the game. So it might be a heavy David Johnson game is my thought there. I don't think they're going to be passing it too much. We'll see how that plays out. Next up, the Rams and the Eagles. Cooper Kupp for the Rams. He hasn't topped 100 receiving yards since week 8 last year when he had 220, that monster 220 game against the Bengals. I still love him this week. I'm playing him as my wide receiver 3, I believe, in my league. Yeah, I am going to play him. I think the Eagles will have trouble with Cooper Kupp. I think he's fine. I'm putting him in there. Carson Wentz, however, his protection, 8 sacks last week. His receivers are major concerns. The Rams took care. I mean, they took care of Dak Prescott overall pretty good, I thought. But without Lane Johnson, is this guy going to play? If Johnson can play, the line is upgraded. I do like Carson Wentz more. I'm going to keep an eye on that report closer to game time. Without him, even having Miles Sanders in there to throw out of the backfield for quick stuff will help Carson Wentz. We'll see how that shakes out. Another injury kind of team you got to keep an eye on. Malcolm Brown for the Rams. I think he's a starter now over Cam Akers. But, man, you got to play him now because it could change at any time, any week. So, for now, I'm going to keep rolling with Brown, Akers secondary until they tell me otherwise. Deshaun Jackson, he hardly played in week 1. He's going to get Jalen Ramsey more than a few times, right, for week 2. Not too high on Jackson this week. Boston Scott, Miles Sanders could or could not play. It's it's going to alter things for Scott. He struggled in week 1 against Washington, 9 carries for 35. That Washington front line, though, is some serious stuff, man. The O-line for the Eagles is a problem. So can the Rams contain Scott? Sure, right? If there's no Sanders, I'm going to plug Boston Scott in a flex play. If there is Miles Sanders, I'm probably not even going to start Scott whatsoever. Tyler Higbee, the Eagles could not handle Logan Thomas, right, at that position in the red zone. So he's a good bet to score. I'm counting Higbee in for a TD, absolutely. Dallas Goedert, he looked better than Zach Ertz almost, right? The Rams looked pretty vulnerable to tight ends last week. So to have Goedert or Ertz, each one of them pick your poison, I do like Goedert quite a bit this week. Next game, Denver, Pittsburgh, Big Ben. Man, whew. Big Ben picking up where he left off. If they pass a little more with their array of weapons going forward, right, they can be very dangerous. The Broncos are losing cornerback A.J. Bouye, right? He's out. I think Ben can sling it all over them. Benny Snell, keep an eye on him. James Conner may not play. He's another one to watch and monitor for the, did not participate, did not practice stuff. Game time decision, I'm sure. You never know. They're being a little hush on it, but he looked more explosive to me. He racked up 113 on 19 carries. If Conner does not play, obviously Snell is your play. He's a volume RB2. Tough matchup. That Denver defense limited Derrick Henry, but I still like him. If Conner's healthy, I think Snell's going to be a challenge to him for a feature role. You're going to have to see how that plays out, or they play a committee style moving forward to keep Conner healthy. That's kind of where I'm leaning right now. And they're going to want to keep Conner from taking a heavy workload. So I think they split it. Broncos kind of wilted against Derrick Henry after a bit. I'm going to take Snell this week. Melvin Gordon, the Steelers destroyed Saquon Barkley. He's not Saquon, right? We know that. But if Phillip Lindsay's injured with the turf toe, it's going to be Royce Freeman behind Gordon. I just don't see that being enough to get it done. Jerry Jeudy, I don't care about that drop. Means nothing. When, if whether Cortland Sutton plays or not, it's a little hard to trust him if you saw that drop and you're like, you got to make the call. You going to roll with him or not? I think the Steelers secondary is going to handle him. We'll see. I'm not ready to commit just yet. Like I said, week 3, week 4 is when I start really getting a little more confident in players. The lay of the land. Noah Fant looked pretty good. Explosive plays. I did like Fant. I've got him in one league. The Steelers, they took care of Evan Ingram. I think they've got the linebackers to match up on Fant, and they can handle him easily. Next game, the Vikings and the Colts. Phillip Rivers, pretty ugly debut. Still had plenty of volume, though. The Vikings just showed you, right, how bad they are on that back end. So if the Colts running game sets up nice, Rivers should have a field day on deep balls. We'll see. Without Marlon Mack, it's going to be JT and Nyheim Hines, and I love that combination. I think they'll kill it. T.Y. Hilton, he was pretty quiet at first with Phillip Rivers, but man, we just watched Rodgers pick that secondary apart, so I think Hilton's fine. Paris Campbell is fine. He also had tied T.Y. Hilton for 9 targets on Sunday, so second-year man, Ohio State, 6 catches, 71. I think he's a solid flex play moving forward. He could have a huge day. And then on the Vikings, obviously you're going to start Adam Thielen, but B.C. Johnson out-targeted Justin Jefferson 4-3. Johnson caught all 3 of his targets for 56 yards. Maybe he does a little better this week. Still a flex play. If I've got somebody better, I'm going to play him. Next up,
You are looking live.
the Bills and the Dolphins. Some AFC East beat down. Somebody's got to win that division, right? I still don't think it's going to be the Patriots. I think it's going to be the Bills. But everybody knows this is the year to do it. So I think this will be a pretty good matchup. Josh Allen, 4 career games against Miami. He has scored 32, 45, 39, and 25 fantasy points. I'm plugging Allen in. Zach Moss and Devin Singletary. Singletary pretty much had the same equal workload to Moss, but he outproduced them by far. Each had 9 carries, but Singletary outpaced him on the ground 30-11. So through the air, he caught 5 of 7 for 25. Moss caught 3, but he had the short touchdown. So against the Miami team that just allowed 217 and 3 TDs on the ground to the Patriots, right? Singletary's got the big play upside. The workload puts him, to me, in that RB2 spot. But is Zach Moss going to take his touchdowns? Can he score? I think Singletary will be fine this week. He ought to get in for a touchdown or so, but I think it's dependent on the opponent, obviously. The weaker defenses, Singletary will shine. The tougher ones, I think there'll be more of a split. Devontae Parker, I think he's playing. All the reports that I keep seeing show him to be playing, but he looks iffy with the hamstring. We'll see what happens. Either way, he's getting Tre'Davious White. Preston Williams might not be a good fill-in this week either. I don't know. It's a tough matchup. Mike Gesicki, I think he needs help from his quarterback to get going. This guy just, unless they start feeding him early, he's not really showing up. I don't think this is the spot where he does it, especially against the Bills' D. So I take a pass on him. Next game on the slate, the Niners and the Jets. Jimmy G, I think, I wish he had some better receivers to throw to. I think they're going to focus more on the ground game this week and just limit, having to pass the ball down the field too much. It's the Jets, so why not, right? Heavy run game against the Jets. Brandon Ayuk, inactive in week 1 with the hammy. Maybe he makes it back on the field. I know George Kittle's banged up as well. Jerick McKinnon. The Jets just allowed Moss and Singletary to combine for 8 catches, 39, and a touchdown. So why shouldn't McKinnon get the same treatment, right, and be a popular receiving threat for Jimmy G? So I think McKinnon is a good flex play. Mohamed Sanu, they just signed him. Shanahan's familiar with him from his time in Atlanta, but a week 2 expectation, I can't tell you. Who knows? Maybe he doesn't do much. He just hopped over there. I'm sure he doesn't even know the full playbook yet. Jamison Crowder for the Jets side, he dominated in week 1 out of the slot. Pretty much their most reliable receiver. The Niners don't have Sherman, and their back end is banged up. So I still like Crowder no matter what. You're always going to plug him in as a flex play if you're in a deep league or wherever you're at. So I do like Crowder. I'm not scared off by the matchup there. The next game here, let's get into some primetime stuff.
You are looking live.
Seahawks, Patriots, Sunday night football. Cam Newton, I think he keeps on running. He's going to be doing some more throwing, looking for points on the other side of Russ Wilson. So if this is the time, this is the game for Cam Newton to shine as a passer. I think it does happen. N'Keal Harry, 6 targets in week 1 for the Patriots receiver there. 1 behind Julian Edelman for the lead. Cam Newton, a Cam Newton-led offense, right? It's going to look different than Tom Brady. We know that. But I think he's the top receiver on the outside, on the perimeter for New England. So his matchup, in a game with Seattle, I think it's worth something. Him and Julian Edelman should be fine. Seattle surrendered a league-high 179 receiving yards to Atlanta slot receivers, so Edelman's fine. I like him. I want him in my lineup. James White, I think this game will be different for the Patriots in week 1 when they ran all over the Dolphins, meaning White should be more involved in the pass game, right? Could be heavy Sony for the ground and pound, James White for the passing downs. He only had 3 catches for 30 in week 1, but Newton attempted 20 passes. So last year, White scored 5 of his 6 touchdowns on the road. Keep that in mind. I think he's a low-end PPR starter in Seattle. And the Monday night game,
You are looking live.
the Raiders and the Saints, 60% air yards. That's your stat. Henry Ruggs saw 60% of the Raiders' total air yards. DK Metcalf was the only receiver over 60 in week 1. So I like Ruggs. Derek Carr, it's a run-first team with Josh Jacobs. I don't think they're going to want to force a shootout with the Saints. They're going to look to ground and pound with Josh Jacobs first. But if the Saints start pulling away and he's got to sling it, I love Henry Ruggs. It could go down like that. No Michael Thomas for the Saints. That's going to be hard to see, hard to watch. Emmanuel Sanders is going to take the spot. Michael Thomas with the ankle sprain. I think he'll be busy against the Raiders. They got a bad secondary. We'll see how that looks. And like I said, Henry Ruggs, the Las Vegas slot baby, he looked killer until he got hurt. As long as he's ready for week 2, I think he's your best Raiders fantasy option outside of Josh Jacobs. I really do. The Saints, when I watched them with Tampa Bay, they looked the most vulnerable against the Scotty Miller, receiver out of the slot. So in a similar role, why can't Ruggs do that? Is Marshawn Lattimore going to shadow him, though? I need to see how that back end plays, how they match up on him. Jared Cook, big sleeper tight end. Drew Brees is going to be busier without Michael Thomas, right? You're going to have to spread the ball around. If you look at it, it's a revenge game, right? When Cook played on the Raiders. So I love Jared Cook this week. He would be my tight end sleeper pick of the week for sure. So that wraps it up.
And we let him off the hook.
And we're going to let you off the hook. Under 30 minutes. Again, follow me on Twitter at FantasyWireHQ. Hit up the Live Wire Sunday, 2 hours before kickoff, and I will get you those fantasy lineup questions answered to the best of my ability. So until then, good luck this week in your fantasy games on Sunday. Any players that go the opposite way, remember, you know what to do. Hashtag it because fantasy and let me know what player it was. I'm hitting a because fantasy list of players each week because we all have them, and damn, it sucks. But you got to laugh.
Yeah, all right, this press conference is over.
Go away.
No, it's over, pal.
Well, please,
It's over.